Wolf's Egg Iron Cube. Austria, 1885, a worker cuts a piece of brown coal and a tiny iron cube with smooth edges and grooves, as if cut with a lathe, rolls out of the black lump. Newspapers immediately dubbed the find a bolt from the Stone Age because the coal was deposited in layers that were approximately 20 million years old. The cube ended up in a museum in Salzburg, where it was discovered that it was not pure iron, but cast iron with a high content of carbon and slag, an alloy typical of 19th century blast furnaces. A tiny tail is visible on the edge, the place where liquid metal flowed out of the mold. Under a microscope, the surface is dotted with porous rust cavities like blast furnace slag. It looks like a piece of waste accidentally got into a coal trolley and sank into the seam with it. And yet, looking at the almost perfect planes of the cube, visitors speculate that the geometry is too correct for a random fragment. What if it is a part of an unknown mechanism that nature hid in the thickness of the rock? Lolladoff plate. The Lolladoff plate is a stone dish that is about 12,000 years old. It depicts a disc resembling a UFO and a creature very similar to the modern idea of aliens. You can also consider a spiral galaxy. According to scholar David Gaiman, the disc was purchased from the city of Mussoorie in North India and belonged to the strange Zopas people, who used such discs during religious ceremonies. However, he later admitted that he made this whole story up, including the creation of a sketch of the plate, which his friend then translated into black and white. Amazing artifacts constantly remind us that we still don't know much about the place where we live. But we know for sure that earthly riddles will sooner or later be solved. And while the secrets are not revealed and the inhabitants of other worlds are not discovered, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Why did people break shale rings? Archaeologists from the University of Helsinki have examined more than 200 previously discovered slate rings and their fragments dating back to the 4th millennium BC. It turned out that in the Stone Age, these items were not just decorations or ritual goods. They were specially cut into fragments and divided among several people to indicate kinship or other social ties. Shale or tuff rings were common over 6,000 years ago among hunter-gatherers in northeastern Europe. 246 such objects have been found on the territory of today's Finland. Archaeologists often find various artifacts in a fragmented state, but in this case they doubted that the rings had already collapsed in the ground or from antiquity on their own. Experts found and studied traces of tools and processing at the ends of the fragments of the rings and confirmed that the fragments were cut intentionally. Then a hole was made in them, probably for wearing on a cord or sewn to clothes. Scientists have suggested that these jewelry was never intended to be used as whole rings. Instead, they denoted parts of one whole. People who belonged to the same group, clan, or some other community received the pieces. Also, some rings have been found in Stone Age burials. According to archaeologists, there is an example when two fragments of the same ring were found in neighboring graves, which could indicate the relationship of the buried. One part was never found. Apparently, at the time of the funeral, one more person remained alive. With the help of X-ray fluorescence analysis, it was possible to establish that the jewelry comes from present-day Russia, from the shores of Lake Onega. From there, they were delivered hundreds of kilometers through an extensive network of exchanges. Products differ in chemical composition and design. The remains of the largest megaraptor in history. A team of paleontologists led by Mauro Aranciaga Rolando have recovered the skeleton of one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs known to science. It was discovered back in 2019, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, excavations had to be postponed. The extinct monster was named Mype macrothorax in honor of the evil spirit from the mythology of the Patagonian people Tulcha. The remains found indicate that the dinosaur had a length of up to 10 meters and a weight of about 5 tons, which made it an incredibly dangerous predator. For comparison, other megaraptors were up to 8 meters long and were only a meter taller than a person, but at the same time they were incredibly efficient when hunting. Outwardly, megaraptors looked like tyrannosaurs, with which they were confused in the past, but new research points to two fundamental differences. First, the bones of megaraptors were partially hollow, which made them excellent runners. Secondly, the small forelimbs were actually very developed, and with the help of claws up to 35 centimeters long, the raptors could inflict terrible wounds on their prey. There is a version that megaraptors could even grab their victims and tear them apart without using their mouths, because their teeth are rather small. Probably these predators relied on the speed and strength of their claws, and their size allowed them to hunt almost any fowl that lived on the territory of modern Argentina 70 million years ago. Neolithic sacrifices. On Eulenberg Hill near Magdeburg, Germany, archaeologists have discovered a complex Neolithic burial site with two monumental mounds dating back 6,000 years. The two mounds, located 200 meters apart, contain wooden burial chambers with several burials. Since 2023, archaeologists from the State Office for Monument Protection and Archaeology of Saxony-Anhalt have been actively studying Eulenberg in anticipation of the construction of an industrial park by Intel. Eulenberg, thanks to its fertile soils, has been used for settlement since the early Neolithic period. During the Ballberg culture, two large wooden burial chambers were built. Burial practices varied, from simple burial pits to burials in wooden chambers under mounds, indicating public or family burials. About 1,000 years later, during the globular amphora culture, the road between the mounds was used for processions with sacrifices of young livestock and human burials. The La Palma vase. La Palma is one of Spain's Canary Islands in the Atlantic Ocean, northwest of Africa. On its northwestern coast in the Tijarafe region, a rare find was discovered in a cave next to human remains, a complete ceramic vase dating from the 13th to 15th centuries. This ceramic belongs to the Benajorites, the original inhabitants of La Palma before the Spanish conquest. The discovery was made as part of the Proyecto Occidente project. Student Lourdes Barroso noticed the vessel during an examination, and Francisco Camaño's team documented the context and carefully removed the object. Analysis confirmed the funerary setting. The vessel was laid in situ and not in a mixed layer, which is extremely rare. The shape is typical of the local tradition: a rounded bottom, a wide neck, and smooth, unadorned walls. Such vessels were used both in everyday life and in rituals. It can be correctly interpreted as part of a burial kit next to the remains. Now archaeologists have the chance to test the composition of the clay and impurities, search for traces of the contents, and compare the shape with other assemblages on the island. The main value is its intactness and precise context. This allows us to speak not of an abstract Canarian style, but of specific practices. How exactly burials were designed on La Palma in the late medieval period, and what was considered necessary to be placed next to the person. Rock crystal reliquary. This reliquary, created in France between 1175 and 1200, is a work of art and religious craftsmanship. It is made of gold and silver and decorated with rock crystal, which adds transparency and lightness. The relics of saints or other valuable relics of great importance to believers could be kept inside. Such reliquaries often became objects of worship. They were exhibited in churches and monasteries where they attracted pilgrims from all over. The design of the reliquary itself is especially interesting. It is made in the form of a miniature building with decorative arches, columns, and small figures of saints, which symbolize the idea of a spiritual temple. The transparent cylinder of rock crystal allowed believers to see the contents, which strengthened their faith in the sanctity of the stored relics. How people found or didn't find food. A new analysis of ancient predators remains by Rice University provides new insights into how prehistoric humans found or didn't find their food. The behavior of the saber-tooth when consuming carcasses and the dynamics of large Pleistocene guilds of carnivores work was published in scientific reports. For more than 3 decades, archaeologists have believed that one of the potential sources of meat, which was crucial for early human brain development, was the flesh left behind by saber-toothed cats. Until recently, researchers believed that prehistoric humans stripped the flesh from abandoned animal carcasses for food, but these ancient remains suggest that was not the case. A new fossil study from 1.5 million years ago shows that saber-toothed cats completely consumed the flesh of their prey and even ate some of the bones. These legendary predators, so named because of their huge upper fangs, roamed the landscapes of Africa, Eurasia, and America from the Miocene to the late Pleistocene. Manuel Dominguez Rodrigo, visiting professor of anthropology at Rice and the first author of the study, along with his colleagues, was able to determine the feeding habits of these prehistoric cats based on their skeletons and those of their prey. Dominguez Rodrigo says the discovery is significant because it means that early humans used different ways to find protein sources. This provides further support for the idea that early humans were already successful hunters. Biggest ichthyosaur tooth. This tooth is huge by ichthyosaur standards. Its root was 60 millimeters in diameter. The largest specimen still in a complete skull today was 20 millimeters and belonged to an ichthyosaur that was almost 18 meters long. However, estimating the size of an ichthyosaur from its teeth alone is not an easy task, because the most toothy species are often not the largest. The fact is that marine predators with large teeth often spend a lot of energy hunting, while giant filtering predators can afford to swim slowly, collecting the smallest prey. Other record finds in the Alps include the largest trunk vertebrae in Europe, rivaling even the 21-meter Shastasaurus sicaniensis, the largest ichthyosaur fossil ever found. However, the researchers note that they need new finds of ichthyosaur fossils to complete the picture. Egypt's unconventional metal. A new study has revealed a simple fact. In the Middle Kingdom, around 2000 to 1650 BC, Egyptian artisans intentionally made bronze arsenical. Traces of a special additive, spice, which is rich in arsenic, were found in slags and melts. This was not a random impurity from the ore, but a deliberate ingredient, added to make the alloy harder, last longer, and reduce wear during work. Analysis was conducted by a team from the Czech Academy of Sciences, along with colleagues in Cairo and France. The results showed that the bronze's composition was controlled and repeatable. This means the workshops had a stable supply of raw materials and a well-defined technological regime rather than haphazard attempts to produce strong bronze. Another important conclusion for the scientists, lead, which was smelted with spice, can bias isotopic indices, leading to overestimation of the copper's origin in some studies. Samurai treasure. Not far from Tokyo, the largest treasure trove of antique coins in Japanese history was discovered. The treasure is kept in a huge clay pot, which is now on display in Kumagaya at the Saitama Prefectural Cultural Treasury, that is, the National Museum. The historical treasure of bronze coins not only reveals new historical data, but also serves as evidence of the natural chemical processes of time. The copper in their bronze alloy has oxidized over the past 400 years, causing the coins to take on a bright green hue due to a patina similar to that covering the Statue of Liberty. The clay pot of coins, which is more than half a meter wide, was likely buried hundreds of years ago. It was discovered by archaeologists last year in ruins that were the site of a medieval samurai pavilion. The coins date back to the 15th century during the Ming Dynasty in China. Coins from the Tang Dynasty, 7th century, were also found at the same excavation site. They are associated with Chinese dynasties because Japan was one of the last great civilizations to adopt its own coin system. The coins were held together on ropes passing through holes, and each rope contained 1,000 coins. The standard of the time was one string of 1,000 bronze coins equal to 1 ounce of silver. This knowledge of the historical period allowed archaeologists to estimate the number of coins without removing them from the giant pot. The number 260 inches was engraved on its lid. This coin hoard represented a huge fortune in 15th and 16th century Japan. For this money, one could buy enough rice to feed 500 people for a year. They propped up the door with a valuable artifact. Imagine a unique work of art created by a master for many years served as an ordinary door prop in a barn. In 1930, the Council of Invergordon, Scotland, bought a marble bust of Sir John Gordon for only £5 sterling, an insignificant amount at that time. At that time, no one guessed that almost a century later the bust would be valued at £2.5 million, and the proceeds from its sale would be able to bring up to £125,000 into the community budget annually. This sculpture was created in 1728 by the French sculptor Edmé Bouchardon, known for his works for the gardens of the Palace of Versailles and the Fountain of the Four Seasons in Paris. His works have always been highly valued, and the bust, sculpted in Rome, has special historical and cultural value. However, it was lost due to a mix-up in local authority records, and for many years was used as a door stand in a barn in Ballantor, an industrial area near Invergordon. When it resurfaced, Sotheby's experts valued it at £2.5 million. 18,000 years underwater. At the time of another underwater exploration, divers made a sensational discovery. Quite by chance, they found a previously unknown passage, which is located between the Dosoyus Caves and the Sa-Akti Cave system. Sailing into this tunnel, they found many different artifacts. The divers immediately reported their find to the local authorities, and those in turn passed the information to archaeologists. A group of divers was engaged in the study of underwater caves. The total length of the passages is 372 kilometers. They are located near the Mexican resort of Tulum and are a huge cave system. Most of it is filled with water. This gives it the right to be the second longest after Mammoth Cave in the United States. The water in the cave contains a large amount of minerals, because of which living creatures cannot live in it. The news delighted archaeologists, and they immediately assumed that they would find many valuable artifacts from different eras and centuries in these places. Their intuition did not fail them. Scientists began research as soon as possible, and immediately discovered more than 200 sites that store various archaeological remains in the form of human bones, animal fossils, and even Mayan household items. According to preliminary data, the length of the newly discovered cave is 80 kilometers. Archaeologists, without hesitation, called this place a real treasury, because objects that are about 18,000 years old are stored here. At the same time, do not forget that since the Ice Age, the level of the world's oceans has risen by more than 100 meters. Therefore, we can safely establish that for ancient people, these places served as a refuge and home. The divers managed to find Mayan altars and incense burners. Items from earlier eras were also found. Fossils of 20 animal species of the late Pleistocene. The finds included the remains of 14 prehistoric fires. To what period they belong is still unknown. An interesting find was the tools that have not been studied to date. According to scientists, the age of the found artifacts coincides with the end of the last ice age, 11,700 years ago. At the moment, this place is closed to the public as it is extremely important to conduct research without prying eyes. At the same time, experts express the hope that this is not the last discovery of those places. Drawings can rewrite the history of a city. In Turkey, about 2 kilometers from the ancient city of Alinda, a group of archaeologists discovered a cave in the Nutria, of which turned out to be rock paintings capable of rewriting the history of the ancient city, whose age was considered to be early 3,500 years. Now the discovered drawings can completely change the history of the city. After their study, scientists dated them to the 5th millennium BC. Before that, scientists were sure that the city of Alinda arose about 3,500 years ago. But now, judging by the drawings, people appeared here much earlier, as previously thought, that is, about 7,000 years ago. The cave was discovered during fieldwork in the area. Scientists did not think that they would find a real sensation inside it. In addition to rock paintings, handy materials were found inside the cave, which were most likely used in antiquity. On the walls were depicted human-like figures that scientists have yet to identify. But scientists have already established that images of both men and women were painted on the walls of the cave. But what exactly they depict remains unclear. Scientists still have a lot of work to do before they can unravel the mystery of the drawings. The ancient city of Alinda was once considered one of the largest trading centers in Anatolia. In the center of the city, there was a huge market square, where, in addition to selling goods, meetings were also held. Olive oil and figs were produced in large quantities in the city. All these goods were traded throughout the Hellenistic world. And now it turns out that the city arose much earlier than scientists thought, which means that scientists are waiting for new excavations and studies of both the city itself and its environs. Cleopatra's sunken port. Off the coast near Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria, archaeologists have discovered a submerged site with evidence of an ancient harbor. Kathleen Martinez's team, along with marine archaeologist Bob Ballard, describes rows of massive foundations, estimated to be over 6 meters high, cemented blocks, column fragments, amphorae for storage and transport, and most importantly, numerous anchors dating to the reign of Cleopatra VII. Such an array of artifacts typically accompany a working port, mooring lines, storage areas, and navigational equipment. In 2022, a 1,227-meter-long underground tunnel extending to the Mediterranean Sea was discovered here. Its filling contained pottery and artifacts dating back to the Ptolemaic period. The harbor may have served the city complex and temple of Taposiris Magna, and during Cleopatra's reign, her fleet. This is supported by the dating and marine profile of the finds, but further pitting, dating of sediments, and linking of the structures to the ancient coastline are needed. If confirmed, we will gain rare evidence of the appearance and operation of the coastal network near the Ptolemaic capital, not in texts but in stone, wood, and iron. Subglacial lake in Antarctica. A Chinese expedition is planning a unique study of the subglacial Lake Kylan in Antarctica, discovered in 2022 and hidden under 3,600 meters of ice. The lake, covering 370 square kilometers and up to 200 meters deep, may have been cut off from the outside world for 3 million years, making it a potential home for unknown life forms adapted to extreme conditions. Researchers hope that penetrating its depths will reveal the secrets of the ancient ecosystem and provide new data about the Earth's climatic past. However, the challenge requires the development of advanced technologies for clean drilling and sample collection to avoid contamination of the unique environment. There is no start date for the expedition as scientists ramp up technological preparations for this ambitious project, which aims to explore never-before-seen corners of our planet and understand how life can survive in the harshest environments. Buddha in Nirvana. Underground at the site of the ruins of a 7th century Buddhist monastery and temple in Ajna Tepa, archaeologists have discovered fragments of frescoes, stupas, and reliefs depicting Buddha, bodhisattvas, and other deities. Unfortunately, many of them were disfigured and partially destroyed in ancient times. One of the most famous finds was a 13-meter statue of Buddha in Nirvana. It was made of paksa blocks, compressed clay used in ancient times to create large sculptures. The statue was found in a ruined state, so it was literally assembled piece by piece. After excavations, the statue was divided into 72 parts and transported to the Museum of Antiquities of Tajikistan for restoration. Today, the original Buddha in Nirvana can be seen there, and its copy is exhibited in the National Museum of Tajikistan. These discoveries not only open important pages in the history of Buddhism in Central Asia, but also highlight the importance of Ajna Tepe as the center of spiritual culture of the ancient region. 1,100-year-old skull altar. In 2012, Mexican authorities first discovered a cave that contained about 150 human skulls. The police then thought it was a modern crime scene and planned to open an investigation. Now a new study has revealed that the skulls found were likely the result of ritual human sacrifices performed 1,100 years ago. How can you confuse an archaeological find with a crime scene? The fact is that the skulls of pre-Hispanic indigenous cultures were often found badly damaged. Usually they were split and placed in ceremonial circles. However, these skulls remained completely intact. Police also believe that the cave at Frontera Comalapa was the perfect place for local gangs to hide bodies. Researchers have found that the skulls from the cave are much older than police thought. They date from between 900 and 200 AD. The teeth of the skulls were removed, which was in accordance with the customs of that time. Scholars believe that the site was once home to a tzompantli, or altar of skulls. These are structures that were used by Mesoamerican civilizations to place the skulls of captives or perform sacrifices. Most often, tzompantli were made of wood, so over time almost no traces of them remained. Archaeologists continue to work in the area in the hope of finding similar altars or any other artifacts from those times. Mystery of the medieval wanderer. Scientists from the University of Aberdeen, after a recent study, have established how the famous medieval wanderer ended up in Edinburgh. We are talking about a man whose remains, dating back to the 6th century AD, along with 13 other people, were discovered in 1975 under a parking lot. Then it was believed that this was a local family that had become a victim of the plague. Now the analysis, which was carried out by experts, showed that the medieval wanderer was not associated with the rest of the group and arrived in the capital of Scotland from the Southern Highlands or Loch Lomond. Ursula Scheer, the head of the research, noted that this discovery was the key to obtaining information about the movements of people in early medieval Scotland and beyond. We know little about the life of the people of that time, but we know for sure that it was a politically and socially turbulent period. Traveling and getting around was not easy back then. Scheer and her team also determined that several members of the group, including the medieval wanderer, had died in agony. They made such a conclusion after studying the skulls. Most likely they were hit with some kind of blunt object, which led to a fatal outcome. This evidence provides important confirmation that the period under review was characterized by high levels of violence. The specialists plan to continue their work to get even more information and learn more about the history of Scotland in the Middle Ages. Amazonian urns. When a tree fell deep in the Brazilian Amazon, the rounded edges of pottery were revealed beneath its roots. Archaeologists uncovered 7 funerary urns. 2 were particularly large. Inside were human bones, along with those of fish and turtles. The urns lay just 40 centimeters below the surface, likely beneath old houses. There are no ceramic lids. It appears they were covered with organic matter that rotted away. The location is Lake Cochila in the municipality of Fonte Boa. Here, on the high floodplains, artificial islands were built hundreds of years ago. This wasn't a whim, but an engineering feat. Soil was brought in, mixed with ceramic fragments, and arranged so that the platform would support the house and prevent it from being submerged by floodwaters. The urns were found on this platform. The pottery contains an unexpected mix of techniques, plus a rare green clay, known only from a few places in the region. Why fish and turtles ended up in the urns alongside people remains an open question. This could have been a ritual element, a household item, or a symbol of a connection with water. For now, these are hypotheses. But the site's organization, artificial islands and recurring vessel shapes, suggests a regular practice, not a one-off. The urns are currently in Tefe's laboratory. Organic dating, isotope analysis, and paste comparisons will be conducted. Perhaps a name for the tradition will emerge. Oldest human tooth. Scientists have announced a sensational discovery in Germany. Ancient dental fossils estimated to be almost 10 million years old that they say do not fit into the established chronology of human history. What's truly shocking is that one of these fossils resembles the teeth of man's earliest ancestors. However, until now, such teeth have only been found in Africa, not Europe, and even then the existing range of fossils is millions of years younger. Found in September 2016 near the German city of Eppelsheim, 2 well-preserved teeth date back to approximately 9.7 million years ago. One of the teeth, an upper right first molar, is similar in characteristics to other specimens found in the area. But the other tooth, the upper left canine, is different, and the researchers say its outline and shape are similar to those of hominin species, including Australopithecus afarensis. The problem is that Lucy is estimated to be only 3 million years old, and it is believed that humanity's earliest ancestors began their migration from Africa to Europe and Asia approximately 100,000 years ago. So the question is, who did these teeth belong to? Which were in the wrong place and at the wrong time, and how did they get there? Found in ancient underground shelter. Scientists have found an ancient underground city where the first Christians hid. And it is, not surprisingly, in Turkey. A couple of years ago, under the Turkish city of Midyat, research began on a large-scale cave complex. Local residents knew about the existence of the caves themselves, but had no idea about the scale of underground structures. First, archaeologists found a corridor in one of the caves which led to the dungeon. In the underground city, altars, warehouses used for provisions, wells, as well as a network of tunnels were found. Presumably, the first Christians hid here almost 2,000 years ago from the persecution of the Roman Empire. At that time, this region was part of the Roman state, and the city of Midyat was located in the province of Assyria. Scholars believe that Christians who were initially fleeing persecution used the underground city after the collapse of the Roman Empire to hide from numerous wars that eventually led to the Islamization of the region. According to archaeologists, the underground city ceased to exist after the genocide of Armenians, who are also Christians, occurred in 1915. Ancient remains from the time of the death of dinosaurs. Paleontologists have discovered the first ever fossilized remains of a dinosaur that died on the day a massive asteroid hit Earth 66 million years ago. Scientists have discovered the leg of a Thescelosaurus, a small herbivorous dinosaur, next to a fragment of a giant meteorite that killed it. Experts believe that the skinned limb was most likely torn off in the fall of the giant Chicxulub asteroid and then buried in the fallen debris on the day of the fall. A Thescelosaurus fossilized leg was discovered along with a series of unique artifacts at the Tanis fossil site in the U.S. state of North Dakota, known as the Hell Creek Formation. This site, which was first discovered in 2008, is unusual in that it actually recorded events from the first minutes to hours after the Chicxulub impact in great detail. Paleontologists say this is the first discovery of a dinosaur that was the victim of the famous asteroid impact, which created an impact crater about 150 kilometers wide in what is now the Gulf of Mexico. They also believe they have discovered a tiny fragment of the space rock that ended the age of dinosaurs and led to the emergence of mammals. Among the finds in Tanis are unique specimens: a fish with small fragments from a meteorite impact in its respiratory tract, a petrified turtle pierced with a wooden stake, and the skin of a horned triceratops. Professor Paul Barrett of the Natural History Museum in London said the preserved leg once belonged to a dinosaur from the genus Thescelosaurus, whose name translates to wonderful lizard. Before, we didn't have reliable knowledge of what their skin looked like. This find shows very convincingly that these animals were scaly like lizards. They were not covered in feathers like their meat-eating contemporaries. The study shows that something very quickly tore off the leg of the animal. There are no signs of disease on the leg, no obvious pathologies, no signs of eating the leg, such as bite marks or missing pieces. So the best idea we have is that this animal died more or less instantly. Tanis was discovered in 2008, but it wasn't until 2019 that it was announced to the general public. The distance between Tanis and the site of the Chicxulub impact crater in the present-day Gulf of Mexico, off the Yucatan Peninsula, is more than 2,500 kilometers. But the force of impact in a collision with a meteorite was such that it was reflected throughout the planet. This video has come to an end, but there are many other videos on the channel about the finds of archaeologists. Rate this video with your thumbs up or down and leave your kind comments. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone.